Well, G.E. Could I first of all begin by welcoming all of you to today's conference? Fáilte romh a galéir agus tá achas mór orm a bheith anseo live imagine. I want to offer a particularly warm and appreciative welcome to those of you here today who are not from the nationalist or republican tradition. Your presence here, your voice here and your input here will, I believe, bring significant added value to our discussions and to what we hope to achieve today. And there's a bit of a buzz about the Europa Hotel. I've just come from a city where there is an absolutely massive buzz. And there has been a buzz in that city since the beginning of this year. That buzz didn't come about because one group of people in the city decided it was a good idea to go to try and achieve the accolade of City of Culture for a year. It came about because all of the parties in that city, political parties, unionists, loyalists, Republicans and nationalists, Catholics, Protestants and dissenters, recognised that there was a real opportunity to propel Derry City, or as some people call it, Londonderry, forward. And the city has been propelled forward. If you had have been in that city over the course of the past 6 months, or more specifically, over the course of the last 3 weeks, you would have seen something between 40 and 50,000 young people from all parts of the north of Ireland congregate together in a former military site, which we have spent millions on, to turn into a public space where people can feel comfortable with one another. And you know something? During the 3 days of the BBC One's big weekend, there wasn't even a hint of trouble. People recognised the opportunity that was being presented to them, and they seized it with both hands. And I think credit needs to be given to our young people who were part of that event. Young people can sometimes get a bad press, and sometimes young people can be badly misled also. But the young people who were there, who were from every section of our society, recognised that being there together sent a very, very powerful message to the world about how we were moving forward. And again, last weekend, with the Wall City Marathon, won by a 53-year-old from Lavey in County Derry, the buzz in the city was absolutely incredible. The buzz in the city today is even more incredible. People awaiting the return of Columkill and this battle between the Loch Ness Monster and Columkill at the Peace Bridge sometime late tomorrow night. It is absolutely amazing what is happening. And to be quite honest, and I've said this to many people over the course of the last while, I think what's happening in that city is an example that many other places need to be taken up. I remember it was probably about 3 weeks before he died, I met with Sir George Quigley and a group of leading Belfast business people. And we met for about 2 hours under the good offices of my good friend Harold Good. And it was a very powerful discussion. And I wasn't on my own, I was accompanied by other leading members of Sinn Féin. And we were listening very, very carefully to what was being said. We dealt with a wide range of issues. We talked about parades. And I just want to talk about that for 1 wee second. Because I come from a city where we've solved the problem of parades. And we solved it 8 years ago. How did that come about? It came about because people like me, people like Wooly Hay from the DUP, the Apprentice Boys, the Bogside Residents Association, Garvin O'Doherty, representing the local business community and other business leaders, decided that we didn't want our city a city of mayhem and turmoil when either Orange Parades or the Apprentice Boys were marching. We wanted an agreement. And as a result of the effort that was made, we got people into a room and we got an agreement, and we have been trouble-free for the last 8 years. And I've said to my unionist colleagues around the table at the executive, that needs to happen in Belfast. But the key to resolving it was the willingness of people to get into a room together, to respect one another, and to participate in real dialogue. At the end of the meeting with Sir George, who was a man I had tremendous respect for, I turned to one of the leading business people who were with him, just as the meeting was about to end. And the thought occurred to me that I should ask the question. And I said, do you guys ever talk to the Orange Order? Does anybody ever talk to the Orange Order about how we don't need mayhem on the streets? About how bad the image is internationally if a burning car is seen on the front page of the Belgian, the Brazilian, or the South African newspapers? And do you know what the answer was? Which knocked me for six. He says, no, we never speak to the Orange Order. And I think therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. And it's not just a problem for the Orange Order. There's also a problem even for some people in the Nationalist Republican community who think it's not a good idea to engage in dialogue. I absolutely believe in dialogue. And I absolutely believe that whenever people come into a room are prepared to respect one another, that solutions can be found. And my own city is the evidence for all of that. So I think this discussion today for many of us is a first small step in a discussion which is long overdue. And I'll make my own contribution to this today. It's only an opening contribution. I intend to make more, maybe even more significant contributions in the course of the next number of weeks and months. So this is the beginning of a discussion which, if it is to be successful, has to travel beyond here, beyond today and beyond tomorrow, and one which must become more and more inclusive. When we arrived this morning, there was a group of 20 people who were obviously very angry, and they expressed that anger. There's nothing I would love more. I said to Jerry Adams, we were in no one care, I said, I'd like to go over and say to those people, come on in. You'd be very welcome to come in and state your point of view. Now, I don't think they're ready to come into the room, but I certainly absolutely believe at some stage in the future it's essential that we get everybody into the room. So the task that we have set ourselves is the realisation of a city of culture, a city of equals and an island of equals. And I think some people will say that's a huge task, and it absolutely is a huge task. I agree with that. Some people might say it's an impossible task. Well, I totally and absolutely disagree with that analysis. My answer to commentators, journalists, and others who tell us that we will never find solutions to the big issues that cause division amongst us is to quote the words of Nelson Mandela when he said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And today we take for granted many ideas and concepts which once upon a time seemed impossible, such as the right to vote, freedom of conscience, religious liberty, the separation of state and church, the public good overriding private interests. The seeds of many of these were sown by the political ideas that the dissenting Presbyterians of this city introduced to the island of Ireland at the end of the 18th century. Their ideas were not just reflected in movements for Irish independence, but were the lifeblood of the reform movements in Irish life for improvements in the status of women, children, education, health, housing, and the labour and trade union movements. Those ideas and the people responsible for promoting them still provide us with a link to each other despite generational divisions and the inherited difficulties arising out of those divisions and the associated conflicts which we are here to talk about today. And this link, in my opinion, along with our agreements and our shared commitment to a better future for all, absolutely compels and enables us to forge new relationships and an inclusive and shared city where harmony and equality are the basis for uniting Catholic, Protestant and dissenter, people of all religions and none, and those who have chosen Belfast as their new home. And that then essentially is what this conference is all about. It is about the future, it is about building, and clearly this presents huge challenges to all of us, collectively and individually. And while our concentration is on the future, we certainly cannot ignore the past. The legacy of conflict is with us, and I believe, regrettably, will always be. The pain, the suffering, and the tragedies from decades of conflict are for many people as real today as they were when they first occurred. Hardly a month goes by that we're not faced with an anniversary of a past tragedy. Each such occasion evokes very painful memories, and each such occasion reminds us that we have still to address the past in a way that complements and assists the building of the future that we're all committed to and will serve our better interests. So I want to address this very issue. I am a firm believer that we can deal with every issue if we get the framework right and the context right. Thus far on this issue, we have achieved neither. The peace process came about, I believe, because there was a strong desire and a will among many key players to get and find a way forward. And in terms of this issue of how we deal with the past, I think that's what's absent at the moment, and that's what we need to correct. So the starting point for me is a reminder that the peace process is a conflict resolution process. The conflict is clearly over, but the work of conflict resolution goes on. And I believe that if we locate legacy issues in the framework of conflict resolution and in the context of the broader peace process, then we can address these matters in a way which will heal divisions, consolidate the peace, and become guarantors of the future. If we approach these issues on the same basis that we approach the ending of the conflict, then acknowledgements about the past can become a powerful dynamic which will move us again to new places that many believe are beyond us. The peace process wouldn't have happened without an important contribution from many people, and I have always commended that contribution. But we should also remember that the peace process would not have delivered an end to conflict without a realisation by the combatants on all sides that there would be no victors. So we must, I believe, apply the same logic to the task of resolving the legacies of division and conflict. An approach which seeks to win what was not won in conflict will lead us absolutely nowhere. Many victims seek truth recovery, the acknowledgement of corporate responsibility for what happened to them and or their loved ones, and they're entitled to hold this position. But these, I believe, will only be advanced on the same basis that we secured an end to the conflict. There are no winners. The voices of all victims must be heard, not simply the loudest voices, not simply the victims on any particular side, or those on no side. The views of the many thousand victims who have remained silent must also be heard. So let us have a renewed engagement on this, and let us see what we can achieve. I am confident that the outcome will be positive. Others will have justifiable doubts about such a context, about the outworking of such an approach, and they are entitled to feel so. The onus is on those who are in leadership to show leadership. That's what it's about. It's about people showing leadership. So let us concentrate our collective will and determination on dealing with the past. That's a phrase I think that irks with me a little bit. because I doubt if we will ever adequately be able to deal with the past. One thing is absolutely certain, which is an absolute priority, is that we need to learn from the past, on the here and now, and on building a better future. The present status quo serves none of our people well, and I absolutely believe that we can do much, much better. So we need to set a new direction of travel towards the future, towards new generations, towards the embrace of new possibilities, and I dearly hope the emergence of new human and political relationships. We need an inclusive public discourse on reconciliation in our society, agreeing through dialogue and engagement with each other that we should unite and shape in a new context for ourselves will in itself become a catalyst for change. The dismantling of fear, distrust, division and segregation in our community is a must-do for all of us. If we can agree a common charter on the way forward, one premised on the principles of equality, mutual respect and parity of esteem, then we can surely make huge advances. So, of course, these are not new concepts. Like the idea of a city of equals, they're easy to verbalise and easy to commit to. Yes, that is the easy bit. But what they ask of us in terms of what do they ask of us in terms of action? And maybe today is too early to define the actions. As an opener, though, let's try and define the context that is broader than the cliche, but not too broad to allow us to hide within it, without, in the same way as I alluded to with respect to dealing with the past, challenging our thinking. For me, equality means equality for everyone. A city of equals means the promotion of inclusivity. It means eradicating marginalisation. It means equality for the old, for the young, for males, for females, for people who are gay, people who are straight, religious, atheists, black, white, football supporters, punks, Irish speakers, orange, green, workers, drinkers, ex-prisoners, business people, Chinese, Indian, Polish, and all the other ethnic minorities. It means equality for the able-bodied, the disabled, for runners, walkers, musicians, and on and on and on it goes. And similarly, with parity of esteem and mutual respect, we can ask each other difficult questions about all of these matters, but first of all, let us ask ourselves some difficult questions. Almost half of this city is unionist. Almost half of this city is nationalist. What does respect for the different political identities, ethos, or allegiances in this city mean for me as an Irish Republican? Do I respect the British identity? Yes, I do. A year ago, I met with and welcomed Queen Elizabeth to Belfast, and I hoped then that this important, yes, small gesture would offer some assurances to unionists. Can I do more? Yes, I believe, of course, I can. In the aftermath of that event, within a couple of weeks of it, I went to 2 engagements in a part of the north in my capacity as Deputy First Minister, and 2 people from the nationalist Republican tradition refused to shake my hand and made it clear that the reason they refused to shake my hand was because I had shook the hand of Queen Elizabeth. And I have to understand that. That was a very difficult decision for Republicans to come to, but I absolutely believe it was the right decision. It was the right decision that I send a message to the unionist, loyalist community that I was prepared to respect the visit of someone who they had an allegiance to. And I stand over that decision. That's what leadership is all about. And even this morning we hear that her husband, Prince Philip, has been taken to hospital and will be there for the next 2 weeks. So obviously we wish them well in relation to hopefully what will be a good outcome from that. So, like the ending of conflict, accommodation will not be achieved on a winners or losers basis, nor will it be achieved without leadership or without action. If we cast symbols, flags, parade routes, or anything else as things to be won or lost, then we will only move forward at the pace of the slowest mover. I have said in a number of speeches in the course of recent times, compromise was always a dirty word in the annals of Irish history, depending, of course, on which tradition you came from. But I absolutely believe that we should not be ashamed of compromise. And I am proud of the agreements that we, indeed our communities, have made over the last 15 years. Good Friday Agreement was 15 years ago. For the majority of people, it represented an end to war, the triumph of dialogue over violent conflict, inclusion over exclusion, equality over hierarchy. The outworking of it means that all decisions are based upon power sharing as equals, and that our people are represented as equals in a power sharing executive. The agreement was a levelling of the political playing field in the North for the first time since partition. And it allows me, as an Irish Republican, to map out a peaceful and democratic path to the reunification of Ireland. It enshrines in law the rights of citizens in the North to their Irish identity and offers the same checks, balances and rights and responsibilities to the Unionist people. What we need to do now is build on the success of the past rather than try to unpick it or watch it unravel. And of course you couldn't have a better example in terms of the effort to unpick the progress that has been made than what people witnessed in the course of the last week in the Assembly. And I speak specifically about one of my political advisors, Paul Kavanagh, someone who has made a massive contribution to the peace process, whose work within the community and voluntary sector in the city that I come from has been widely admired and respected. But here was the big issue. Big issue was, which was forgotten about in the whole discussion and only came to prominence whenever I made my contribution in the Assembly on that day. There have been ex-prisoner Sinn Féin advisors for the last 14 years. Whenever I was Minister for Education, Aidan McAteer, an ex-prisoner, was my political advisor. Leo Green, a life sentence prisoner, was Barbara de Bruyn's political advisor in the Department of Health. And of course all of the parties were aware of that, and all of the parties sensibly recognised that this was part of the outworking of resolving conflict and showing people that there was a future for everybody in an inclusive way. When the institutions were restored again after collapse 3 times in 2007, Jackie McMullen became Katrina Ryan's advisor and was her advisor for 4 years. Jackie McMullen was a life sentence prisoner. So for 14 years there have been ex-prisoners. So why did it change? It changed because one person who was anti-agreement got himself elected to the Assembly, and as I said in my speech, lifted not just one party and swung them all around, but indeed all of the other parties. And that was a deliberate attempt to unpick the progress of the past. And I think that has to be challenged, not just by Sinn Féin, it has to be challenged by others within the political process who recognise that the contribution of some individuals, albeit on the basis that they did get elected, but represented only 1 out of 108 people in the Assembly, needs to be faced down. So here we are. Let us start here today with a commitment to a city of equals, and I think we can do this easily. Let us define them what it should or could mean for everyone, especially those who are less well off and disadvantaged. We could do that easily also. And then there is the harder bit. Let us, each of us, set out what we can do on our own steam to advance this objective, and then let us act accordingly. Let us deal with the past, but let us not become entrapped by it. Let us rebuild relationships, not on the basis of recrimination, but on the basis of equality. A new agreed equal Ireland will not build itself. The foundations are there for a better future, a future that is shared, and for a future based on respect and parity of esteem for identity, on the basis of respect and tolerance. So, as I said at the beginning, there will be more contributions to this debate in the time ahead, and I think everybody needs to be involved in that. And I think we need to grasp this nettle. We need to grasp it, and we need to find a solution to the difficult issues that confront us at the moment. When you consider the challenges that we face against the challenges that we faced at the beginning of this process, and the fact that we were able to get an inclusive agreement which eventually brought all of the major political parties on side with the support of all of the people of this island, north and south, then surely the challenges that we face in regard to these difficult issues are challenges I absolutely believe can be overcome. Go raibh míle, míle maith agam.